Welcome. I will be covering today building a view from scratch. So we'll be spending really basically a half hour looking at how to build a view from scratch. Now, some of you folks may not have the ability to do exactly that, but you do have the ability to take an existing view and wipe everything out and start from scratch. You could certainly do that. So keep that in mind. And then you can add back in, the components that you'll want to add in. Before we get started, though, when you start building a view, I guess there's some best practices you want to keep in mind, and that would be, I guess the first thing would be, what are you trying to build? If something doesn't already exist, then you shouldn't be building anything. So first of all, look at the library of views that you have. Here's my demo, and I've got lots of views that I can go through. Some of you folks have the predefined views that are available, where you can go in and select some of these that are available to you. So if you hover over a view, you can see a description of what that view contains, depending if you guys have some of the predefined views, or if you built the views with descriptions, kudos to you, because your users can then benefit from hovering over these and kind of getting a synopsis of what the view would contain, essentially. So we all know that running a view, you click on it, it runs, and if I'm a regular user and I can't build a view from scratch, then I could certainly save this as one of my own personal views by clicking on the Save As button and then saving it as a personal view. Once you have that as a personal view, then you can kind of wipe everything out if you wanted to start from scratch. A quick way to do that would be to open up your View Explorer. This just toggles your View Explorer over here on the right side on and off, so that we can see here on the right-hand side that my View Explorer basically shows me everything within the view that I have. So if I wanted to wipe all that out, I can just highlight all my rows. I can highlight all my measures, and you'll see this option up here to either hide or get rid of everything. If I were to do that, it would then wipe everything out, and then I can start from scratch. So that's how a regular user could basically just kind of wipe everything out, save this as their own personal view, and then start from scratch, right? So here we are starting from scratch. What would be my first thing to do, as we said, would be to obviously keep things in mind in terms of what you're trying to build. If there's a specific view that you have or report that you have in mind that doesn't currently exist, then certainly would be a probably advantage for you to at least develop a prototype and keep it personal for the time being. And then certainly you can have that view promoted through the by contacting your view administrators, and then they could take that view and promote it to a regular global view as needed. So with that being said, how do I start adding my different components? Those would be, what dimensions do I want to include here? Do I want to summarize on customer? Do I want to summarize on division, warehouse? What are business unit? What dimensions would I need to accomplish my view or report? What measures do I need? Is this going to be a sales analysis view? Do I need dollars, units, costs? Is it going to include profitability? What is this comparative? Am I trying to trend out the data and look at trend styles? So there's a lot of things to ask yourself what it is that I'm looking for. Or you might have a report that just simply doesn't exist in your company and you're trying to create it or duplicate it within Stratum. So those are the thought processes that you go through while creating the view. In my example, I'll just say, for instance, I want a view here that allows me to analyze this year versus last year's sales information for both dollars and units. So, and I want to summarize that by company, customer, and some product dimensions, so I can get a feel for who's purchasing the product, and what product are they buying from me. So those, that's my kind of just a very simple way to get started. You could use the View Explorer if you want to. I could add things right here by right clicking right here anywhere on the view area. I can add in my measures. I can edit my rows from here. And when I select that, then obviously you see the edit rows menu come up, and then I can select those dimensions that I just mentioned. And if I wanted to summarize by company, I would double click on company, and as you can see, it moves down to the selected area, knowing that will be within my view once I click OK to move forward here. If I want to get sold to into the mix, I can double click on that. There's a search area up here that you can search for maybe product. I could just type in prod and click on that magnifying glass, and it will look for anything that includes prod, like product brand and product, right? Maybe I want something for, and I can just wipe that out and get back to square one here. I could sort this, as you can see, in alphabetical fashion, and then maybe some sort of regional, maybe there's a region. I'll look for that. And there is a region dimension there as well. So those are the dimensions I want from the get-go, and obviously you can always add more. So now, as you can see, they've been populated over here on the right-hand side. So whether I add them here by clicking edit rows, or I can come over here and right click on rows and edit, it's going to bring up the same menu. Okay. So, either way, you're going to get to the same point. Now, if I want to add the dimension, as you can see up here in the navigational bar, I could do that by clicking on the plus, and it will then give me this quick menu where, as you can see, I can then scroll through and select very quickly. So maybe I want to bring in product class. So then that brings it in, as you can see, as the next level, which may or may not be what you want, but nevertheless, that's yet another way to add a dimension to your rows. So as you can see, there's some redundancies, but certainly there's different ways that you can accomplish the same thing. Now, obviously, we need some sales data here. So what do we do to get the sales data loaded? We want to get this, we can do the same thing here. We can right click, I can add in a regular measure item, and it will then open up my menu for all my measures. And if you have a lot of them, then you'll look for specific keywords like the word sales, and it will then bring up all your sales measures like sales amount. And then once I highlight the measure that I want, I can then select the time unit that I want to make available. So I'm going to select months, and I'm going to select the from and the to, year and month components. So at this point, do you want year to date? Do you want month to date? Year to date would be something along the lines of, selecting the year, your current year, or you can actually have the product. I don't know why those are still days. There we go. And then you can select the month that you want to start out as. For typically year to date, you're going to want to select January. And then your current month, you can select that as well. My current month in this demonstration is September. So and then I can add it. So that's one way I can add that in, right? So I've added that in, I clicked on add, and I've been able to add in a measure. If I could then go to the prior year, I can then click on add again, and now I've got this year and last year's data very quickly. While I'm here, I'm going to bring in my units, and I can kind of play the same game here, where I can then add in 16 and 17 very quickly. So I like that add button because it allows you to stay within the menu and add additional components, as you can see them populate over here in the View Explorer. So, if you like that, that's advantageous for you to kind of do the same thing. I've been working with the product a long time. And this is a really quick and easy way to get the measures in with the time frames that you want very, very quick and easily. And then I can click on exit. Some users click OK here, and what that does is it'll add yet another measure, and then it'll exit the menu. So I don't want that, so I'm just going to click on exit. And as you can see, it then populates my data as I selected it. And then I've got, I want current year, last year, current year, last year, although units populated the other way around, I can then just drag and drop units over here for the current year. And then I've got that problem solved. So now I've got current year sales, this year, last year, current year sales units, this year versus last year, year to date. Okay, so that's, and then I can drill on, as needed. I can then go and drill on the different areas that I've included within my view. So that's adding a view with just regular measures. I may want to add some calculations, and we covered some of that in prior courses. I can very quickly go through a couple calculations here, and we can see how easy that would be to define in a regular calculated measure. So I would want one here in between dollars and units to show a variance or a variance percent, and then I want to do the same thing for my units over here on the right-hand side. So if I right click on this particular measure, it will then it'll then insert the calculated column there on the right-hand side. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. It will then open up my calculation window. I can then select open up my measures, and there's the measure, those 4 measure columns that I have within my view. I can then build my calculations over those. If I want to build a quick variance, I can then say this year versus last year, or minus last year, I should say. Up here in the upper right-hand corner, I can then give it a display mask. I'm choosing money because that's what this is. I could fill in a color here if I want to make it stand out. I can put in a fill color. I don't have to, but as you can see, it's something that's available to me. Here's my caption expression. Normally, I'm going to go overwrite that and type in the word variance or money or dollar. So that's what some things that you can do there to build the variance very quickly. I can then click OK, and now I've got a sales variance there that's highlighted there in a turquoise background color. I can then, while I have the variance, I'm going to add in yet another calculation where I can then use that variance in a variance percent calculation. But before I do that, I'm going to open up my viewer functions, and I'm going to use divide with 0 because that's what I want to do. I want to take my variance and divide it by last year's sales dollars. And that's exactly what this will do. It will divide those 2 measures together. So if I wanted to divide my variance, as you can see, it's filling that in for me. And I'm going to divide that by last year's sales amount. And it's written. I'm going to give it the same color, I think, and then give it the variance percent for dollar column header. And so now I've got 2 columns there. Oops, I forgot something. It was the display mask. No worries. I can right click on the header there and go to properties, and it will then bring up my properties menu here in my View Explorer, and I can give it a format string of %, which is what I want. So it looks like we're up 24% versus last year. So that's, and you can do the same thing with your units over here on the right-hand side. And then you would have yourself another thing I could do is if I don't want to show the variance, maybe I just want to show the variance percent. I can then right click and hide that variance calculation that I don't want to show. If I open up View Explorer, I can see that it's now hidden. I can bring it back, of course, but it's hidden. It's there. Obviously, it needs to be there for the calculation. And I can always right click and show that if I wanted to, right? I can bring that back in if I ever wanted to. All right. And now I can drill. I can follow my drill downs, right? I can, and as I either drill on the header or on specific items, I can then see, obviously the work that I've done. And I've built very quickly. I was able to build this view out, a sales comparison view rather quickly. Another thing I can do is if I wanted to bring in any obviously orders, open orders data, yeah, you can just keep building to the right, adding more components here, more measures here to your right, to the right side as well. Um, if I double click on any of the column headers, it will then bring me into this menu where I can then, you know, uh, reconfigure the time ranges if I wanted to. One thing you might want to do is make this, use the base time periods to make this more dynamic. So if I wanted to, use current year to current year for January to current month, that's basically going to give you the same thing. As you can see, my time range didn't change. Now, I like doing this because it will allow you to, and this would be last year for January to current month. This allows the view to be dynamic. Nothing really changed there, but as I roll into October from September, the view was going to move with me because it now knows that it must adhere to current year and current month for my from and to year and my to period. So if you want this to be, you don't want to use the absolute time frames. If you want this to move along with you and be that year-to-date time frame, okay? So I would suggest using these based time periods to make the view more dynamic, okay? So keep that in mind, that you can certainly use either absolute years, or you can also take advantage of these base time periods. You might ask yourself, what's these offsets for? Well, you might have something that that doesn't exist. For instance, I've got 6 months ago, but I don't have 7 months ago. So I could do something like January. If I wanted to make this a rolling column, I could do something like 6 months ago to current month. That would be more of a, not year to date, but rolling, right? But maybe I don't have a 7 months ago. I can put a -1 there actually, and that would actually be 7 months ago. If I update this, I'm dipping back to February, and then going to September because that's my current month, right? If I dip this back another month, it should go back to January, and indeed it did. So your offset can help you get to where you want, and that will then stay. If I save this, that's always going to be this rolling scenario of 8 months ago to current month. So that's the power of the offset, is that it basically gets you what you want if you don't have what you need for those base time periods. Okay, and then I'm back to year to date, right? And that's what I would want there. But hopefully you see there that you could not only have year to date scenarios, I could do rolling scenarios, I could do current month only. So this is my current month sales, and now the numbers changed, of course, because that's my current month. And this will fill in as the month goes by, of course. If you want the most current closed month, you can do to previous month to previous month, and that'll give you the month behind the current month, which in my case is August. So that's my most current closed month. So those are the games that you can play with those time ranges, where you can very quickly get what you need and then have it stay that way. This column will always show me current year, previous month, and it will stay that way for you. Now, so we've been using time range. One thing you can do is also use time as a dimension, and that's something that very quickly I can do within this view. For instance, if I check my properties, if I right click and check my properties on my measure items, I can see the time range obviously is on. Duh, I've been using it over here. What happens when I turn it off? Because I want to now switch this view over to a view where time is now available to me as a dimension. So when I do that, it's going to tell me that if I change this property, it will cause all my measures to be removed. And I'm like, okay, so be it. I'm gonna go ahead and do that. And then I'm gonna add my measures back in as needed. But before I do that, I'm gonna go to my columns and I'm gonna right click and edit my columns to bring in time. So now my time dimensions are available and I go straight to the bottom. And as you can see, I've got all these time dimensions available to me. And we cover these in other sessions, what to use here and specifically which ones do I want to use. So make sure we'll have more sessions covering those time frames. But for instance, if I wanted to drill in from year to month, then I can choose my year months as needed. I can also, there's a time range of a time dimension called days. There's also a time dimension called months that's not attached to year. But you'll see how this works if I choose year, months, and days here. I'm going to show you how you can have a nice little drill down opportunity here on your data. So now I've added those in. And then for my measure items, again, I'm just going to add in sales measure, dollars. For now, let's just stick with one measure. So now I've got this. See, so now I've got this pretty quickly. The not mapped, just ignore that. That's just data that is not properly mapped to a year. And we can filter that out actually if we wanted to just say, let's just look at our, the years that we have data for. As a matter of fact, maybe I just want 2 years. As you can see, I can filter the time dimension as needed. Just like any other dimension, I can filter that and just include those years that I want. So now, as you can see, I can see at a high level how the company's performing this year versus last. If I drill in on 2017, it will then drill me to the months. I'm going to go ahead and close my View Explorer. It drills me to the months within that year. And as you can see, this is my current year, so I only have data for the months that we've transacted for. And again, remember my current month is September. If I aggregate back up to 2017, I can then drill in on 2016, where I have a full set of months, because obviously that's prior year. How did I do January 2016 down to the daily level? So now, as you can see, by putting in day there and just stacking that right under my year months dimension, I can then drill to the days within January. Isn't that cool? And it will just show the days that I have data for. So it's a great way to trend out the data, see any trend spots. You can add a graph in here as needed. If I want to drill in on both years, I can click on year, and it will give me the whole shebang with a subtotal here for 2016, and then it begins the 2017. I get a scroll bar to scroll all the way to the right here to see my grand total for 2017 there, right? And of course, I can drill down, if I wanted to see how branded and other and private label, obviously I can see, how those are all trended out as I drill to customers sold to. It will do the same thing for all my customers. So that's a very quick way of building out a trend style view. As you can see, it's not that difficult. I can then add in my time dimensions to my columns. And I've got a really nifty way of, aggregating the data. Great way to look at your customers in a aggregate annualized look. I can bring in more years if I wanted to see more history. I can bring those in as needed. Just by managing my filter, I can bring in the necessary years that I want to analyze. If I want to add in another measure, I can go in and add in maybe my units, so I can also see how the volumes are moving in terms of units. And I can certainly add that in as well. If I wanted to calculate between these two measures, I can do the same thing I did before, right? I can maybe do an average sell price. I can take this and use that divided with 0 for my dollars over units. I could give that a quick dollar format and maybe want to include some decimals on that. Call this ASP. And, now I've got an average sale price for my year. See how that basically, it's doing the math across the years because I'm doing calculations against two separate measures there. So that works out really nice. If I then save as, I can do a trend sales with ASP. I can then write in a description. Some of you folks may not have all this capability, but your view administrators would be able to do this. If I want to save this as a personal, I can do that too. You can save that away. Don't lose that way. You won't lose all the wonderful work that you just did to create these views from scratch. So hopefully you can see the difference there between using time as a range. If I were to build this using time range, like for like a monthly style view, it would take me longer. If this is the view I wanted initially, I would know that using time as a dimension or a hierarchy would be much quicker to build something like this as opposed to using time ranges. If I were to use time range, I'd have to add in a column for each one, develop the time range for each column. It would take longer, trust me. So, and that's why we're having this session today. So what the best way to approach a view. Obviously you need to think about some different things, right? And you want to make sure you have a focus on your business purpose for that view. And then you can really, I think from there, you'll be more successful with building the view and including the components that you want for that view to accomplish your goals there. So.